do it the last time or not?
Yeah, yeah. And then what about the prayer for at the end? You know, the prayer for the
departed.
yeah.
We can, there's Matthew now. We can ask someone, or I will do it.
Okay, okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'll do it. That way we won't trying to.
Is that the Detroit Baha'i Center behind you?
No. Oh, yeah, I got fix this.
Because I was saying, I said, whoa, we done came up in the world. We got the spiritual assembly for the Baha'is of Detroit. We are moving on up. Okay, now let's behave ourselves.
I am ready. Well, Aloha, good morning, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha, Dorothy.
Dorothy, would you to sing the healing prayer today? The prayer for healing?
Dorothy Johnson?
Dorothy Johnson.
Aloha. Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Dorothy. Good morning.
Good morning, Aloha.
Aloha, everyone.
A pleasure.
Okay. Now it's on.
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey. Morning. Hello.
Aloha, friends. Aloha. I'm looking for 9 readers for this morning's devotions. Can I get some volunteers?
I'll read something, Hermia.
Okay, Sharon. Thank you. Anyone else?
Matthew and Barbara T will read.
Great. Matthew. Barbara.
Arthur Johnson has her hand raised.
Great.
Elizabeth is trying to speak to you too, Hermie.
Are you muted, Elizabeth? I'm
There.
Can you hear me?
now.
Oh, okay.
I already wrote your name down. Were you going to volunteer? I need 4 more volunteers.
I can read more than one passage.
That would be great. We can just go through everyone again. So Sharon would be first. Matthew, I'll call on you after that. Barbara, I'll call on you. And Dorothy, you would be last.
Adelia's hand was raised.
Oh, I didn't see you. I was writing. Well, then Delia will be last to read. Wonderful. Got everybody in. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes. Maybe not a couple of minutes. Yeah, about a minute. I'm glad you all could make it today. Oops. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started because it's already 11:07. Allahu Akbar, dear friends, God is most glorious. Welcome to the Sunday morning devotional program for the Baha'i Unity Center here in South DeKalb County, Georgia. So wonderful to have all of you with us. Across the globe, you know, the teachings of the Baha'i faith brought to us more than 150 years ago by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, its founder and whose name in Arabic means the glory of God. His teachings have inspired and continue to inspire individuals and communities as they strive to improve their own lives and contribute to the advancement of civilization. Baha'i beliefs address such essential themes as the oneness of God and religion, the oneness of humanity and freedom from all forms of prejudice, the inherent nobility of the human being, the progressive revelation of religious truth, a gradual unfolding of God's purpose with the appearance of each divine teacher, the development of spiritual qualities, which allows us to reflect the image God made us in, the integration of worship and service with work performed in the spirit of service actually being accounted as worship in the eyes of God, the fundamental equality of the sexes more widely evidenced in a setting of equal opportunity, the harmony between religion and science as an established fact, the centrality of justice in all human endeavor, the importance of education, particularly for children, and the dynamics of the relationships that strive to bind together individuals, communities, and institutions as humanity advances towards its collective maturity. Friends, every week we've been having some amazing programs, and this week we're continuing that tradition. We're pleased to have you join us. Again, welcome. We'll begin with the opening devotions, followed by some music by Ms. Solange Lord. Please silence your electronic devices. Thank you. Sharon?
I meant to go back. Okay.
No, you just need to read the.
Yeah, am I reading first, Solange? It's not your turn
I
yet.
called your
Are we
name.
reading first and then
Yes, it's just devotion.
after all the readings? Oh, okay. Did you want me to
Yes.
read first? Okay.
You
All
were
right.
first.
Yes.
Yeah.
O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, and toward all thy signs I set my heart. O Lord, whether traveling or at home, and in my occupation or in my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then thy sufficing help, so as to make me independent of all things. O thou who art unsurpassed in thy mercy, bestow upon me my portion, O Lord, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. Thine is the absolute authority to command.
Thank you, Sharon. Matthew?
I bear, oh, my God, whom I worship and adore. I bear witness unto thy unity and thy oneness, and acknowledge thy gifts both in the past and in the present. Thou art the thou art the all bountiful, the overflowing showers of whose mercy have rained down upon high and low alike, and the splendors of whose grace have been shed over both the obedient and the rebellious. O God of mercy, before whose door the quintessence of mercy hath bowed down, and round the sanctuary of whose cause loving kindness in its inmost spirit hath circled, I beseech thee, entreating thine ancient grace, and seeking thy present favor, that thou mayest have mercy upon all who are the manifestations of the world of being, and deny them not the outpourings of thy grace in thy days. All are but poor and needy, and thou verily art the all-possessing, the all-subduing, the all-powerful. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Matthew. Barbara?
Glorified art thou, O Lord my God. I beseech thee by him who is thy most great name, who hath been sorely afflicted by such of thy creatures as have repudiated thy truth, and who have been hemmed in by sorrows which no tongue can describe, to grant that I may remember thee and celebrate thy praise in these days when all have turned away from thy beauty, have disputed with thee, and turned away disdainfully from him who is the revealer of thy cause. None is there, O my Lord, to help thee except thine own self, and no power to succor thee save thine own power. I entreat thee to enable me to cleave steadfastly to thy love and thy remembrance. This is verily within my power, and thou art the one that knoweth all that is in me. Thou in truth art knowing, apprised of all. Deprive me not, O my Lord, of the splendors of the light of thy face, whose brightness hath illuminated the whole world. No God is there beside thee, the most powerful, the all-glorious, the ever-forgiving, Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Barbara. Dorothy?
O my Lord, thou knowest that the people are encircled with pain and calamities, and are environed with hardships and trouble. Every trial doth attack man, and every dire adversity doth assail him, like unto the assault of a serpent. There is no shelter and asylum for him except under the wing of thy protection, preservation, guard, and custody. O thou the merciful one, O my Lord, make thy protection my armor, thy preservation my shield, humbleness before the door of thy oneness my guard, and thy custody and defense my fortress and my abode. Preserve me from the suggestions of self and desire, and guard me from every sickness, trial, difficulty, and ordeal. Verily, thou art the protector, the guardian, the preserver, the sufficer, and verily, thou art the merciful of the most merciful. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Dorothy. Elizabeth? Unmute yourself. Elizabeth, unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay.
Unmute yourself.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favor and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sharon?
O thou whom we have outwardly never met, yet whom we inwardly cherish in our heart, be fair in thy judgment and present thyself before him who seeth and knoweth thee. Even if thou dost seest and knoweth him not, can any soul be found to elucidate these words with such convincing arguments, clear testimonies, and unmistakable allusions as to appease the heart of the seeker and relieve the soul of the listener? Nay, by the one in whose hand is my soul, unto none is given to quaff even a dewdrop thereof, unless he entereth within this city, a city whose foundations rest upon mountains of crimson colored ruby, whose walls are hewn of the chrysolite of divine unity, whose gates are made of the diamonds of immortality, and whose earth sheddeth the fragrance of divine bounty.
Thank you, Sharon. Matthew?
O my brother, hearken to the delightsome words of my honeyed tongue, and quaff the stream of mystic holiness from my sugar-shedding lips. Sow the seeds of my divine wisdom in the pure soil of thy heart, and water them with the water of certitude, that the hyacinths of my knowledge and wisdom may spring up fresh and green in the sacred city of thy heart. Wow.
Thank you, Matthew. Barbara?
Baha'u'llah has proclaimed the oneness of the world of humanity. He has caused various nations and divergent creeds to unite. He has declared that difference of race and color is like the variegated beauty of flowers in a garden. If you enter a garden, you will see yellow, white, blue, red flowers in profusion and beauty, each radiant within itself, and although different from the others, lending its own charm to them. Racial difference in the human kingdom is similar. If all the flowers in a garden were the same color, the effect would be monotonous and wearying to the eye. Therefore, Baha'u'llah has said that the various races of humankind lend a composite harmony and beauty of color to the whole. Let all associate, therefore, in this great human garden, even as flowers grow and blend together, side by side, without discord or disagreement between them. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Barbara. Adelia.
Baha'u'llah has written, "Verily, the words which have descended from the heaven of the will of God are the source of unity and harmony for the world. Close your eyes to racial differences and welcome all with the light of oneness." Shoghi Effendi.
Thank you, Adelia. And thank you to all of our volunteer readers this morning. Friends, it's now time for the healing prayer. And if any of you wish to remember a loved one through the prayer for healing, please feel free to call out their name at this time, followed by the song being sung by Miss Dorothy Johnson.
Jada Nestor, Andre Esther, Walter
Iman
Harper,
Bowers,
Brittany Johnson,
Ellis,
T. Reynolds,
Ronald Dane,
Rez,
Charlotte Murray,
Christine Gaz, Cassandra Cather, Thy name is my healing, oh my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing, and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-knowing, the all-knowing, the all-wise, the all-wise.
Thank you, Dorothy. Friends, we're honored to have Miss Solange Lord provide the musical presentation for this morning. Solange?
Oh God, my God, thou art my hope and my beloved, my highest and desire. With great humbleness and a devotion, I pray to thee to lift me in merit of the love in the land. Let my heart be dilated with joy to the spirit of confirmation from the kingdom and brighten my eyes by beholding the host of divine assistance descending successively upon me from the kingdom of the omnipotent glory. Thou art in truth, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the all-powerful. All above thy knowledge among thy creatures, and above divine bounty and thy dominion. With great humbleness and eternal devotion, I pray to thee to make me a man of the love in thy land. Let the heart be dilated with joy to the spirit of confirmation from the kingdom, and brighten my eyes by beholding the host of divine assistance descending successively upon me from the kingdom of the omnipotent glory. Thou art in truth, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the all-powerful. Number me with such of thy servants as have detached themselves from everything but thee, have sanctified themselves from the transitory things of this world, and have freed themselves from the promptings of the voices of idle fancy. Let my heart be dilated with joy to the spirit of confirmation from the kingdom, and brighten my eyes by beholding the host of divine assistance descending successively upon me from the kingdom of thine omnipotent glory. Thou art in truth, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the all-powerful.
Beautiful. Do you have another number for us?
Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, and their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves. Oh, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts, and cheer their hearts, make them happy, Lord, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Hermione, you're on mute. You're on mute here.
Yeah, a plane had flown by, so I muted my microphone, which is not traditional. Thank you so much, dear Solange. You weren't able to hear me before. Thank you for that lovely musical prayer offering, both of them. They were just beautiful. Thank you. Very well done. Friends, each week we're blessed to have a guest presenter to come and share with us their insights on a particular topic. This week, we're honored to have Ms. Adelia Bahia Aroja, formerly Ellis. She was born and raised in the PD region of South Carolina. She grew up in the spirit of a region galvanized by the message of Baha'u'llah during the waning years of Entry by Troops. And Entry by Troops, a highly successful mass Baha'i teaching enterprise initiated in the 1970s in the South, which welcomed a great number of new adherents to the faith of Baha'u'llah. Adelia is the eldest of 5 children whose father was of African descent and mother of Irish-Italian descent. Both of her parents became Baha'is in the early 1970s. She was very active in programs at the Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute and attended the Maxwell International Baha'i School in British Columbia, Canada. It was while attending high school that she was introduced to the special designation given to people of African descent by Baha'u'llah. After high school, she did a youth year service, then went on to college in South Carolina. After college, she met and married her husband. They lived in Abu Dhabi, UAE, United Arab Emirates, for 2 years before returning stateside and becoming parents. They are now living in Florence, South Carolina, where Adelia is a professor of public speaking at Francis Marion University and is the executive director of both an Afro-Latin dance school, Aroja Afro-Latin Dance, and an arts and social action initiative, Aroja Arts Collective. Through her social action initiative, she hosts a yearly event, the Convergence Symposium, and an online course for white and white passing people committed to anti-racism efforts entitled Our Moral Imperative, a Revolutionary Change in White America, which is her topic for today. We're pleased to have her share with us this morning. So friends, please welcome Adelia.
Good morning, everyone. I am so pleased to be here. Auntie Barbara invited me. I've known her since It's been a long time. And I'm just really happy to be here. And I just wanted just to be reminded real quick of my time. I'm sorry, say that again.
12:30. You're on mute.
That's a long time.
No,
Okay.
it's not 12:30, it's 12.
Well, 12, not 12:30, 12:40.
But you're a little bit late getting started, so more around 12:20, 12:22, between there somewhere.
Okay, cool. So I want to leave time for discussion and
Yes, there will be
question
time.
asking and things like that. So I won't take up the whole time so that there's time for that. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here, make sure that there we go. I use Zoom quite often because of my job as a professor, and then because of the online program.
Sure.
So I'm really comfortable with this thing. Too comfortable, honestly. So our moral imperative, a revolutionary change in white America, a conversation long overdue, but always timely. So the imperative and the consequences. No less serious is the stress and strain imposed on the fabric of the American society through the fundamental and persistent neglect by the governed and the governors alike of the supreme, the inescapable and urgent duty, so repeatedly and graphically represented and stressed by Abdu'l-Baha and his arraignment of the basic weaknesses in the social fabric of the nation, of remedying, while there is yet time, through a revolutionary change in the concept and attitude of the average white American toward his Negro fellow citizen, a situation which, if allowed to drift, will, in the words of Abdu'l-Baha, cause the streets of American cities to run with blood, aggravating thereby the havoc which the fearful weapons of destruction, raining from the air and amassed by a ruthless, a vigilant, and powerful and inveterate armed enemy will wreak upon those same cities. Shoghi Effendi, Citadel of Faith. So the oneness of humanity through the pupil of the eye. So I think when I wanted to speak on this topic, I felt like it would be important for me to kind of tell a little bit of my story. So like I said, I grew up in South Carolina, and when I was very young, like I said, it was the waning years of the entry by troops, and anyone who was living in South Carolina and probably parts of Georgia around that time, a lot of the people who entered into the Baha'i faith were people of African descent. And in hindsight, now that I'm older and I understand the history of the experience of people of African descent and really the African diaspora, once I understand the experience and I've understood the history, I understand now why so many people became Baha'is. Because within the message of Baha'u'llah, there was the promise of freedom from this pain. There was a promise of freedom and liberation from the systemic issues that faced our communities. So I grew up with a lot of singing, a lot of, I remember doing door-to-door teaching and visiting with people when I was as young as 4 or 5. My parents took me out into the most remotest areas of South Carolina where people didn't have bathrooms, they didn't have plumbing, didn't have electricity. And this was in the 1970s, early 80s. And just the love and the move, the energy and the spirit of the teachings of Baha'u'llah just galvanized thousands and thousands of people in South Carolina, and particularly a town not far from Florence, where I live right now, Dillon, South Carolina. I mean, there were whole churches, congregations of people became Baha'is because they saw in this revelation the voice of Jesus. They saw in this revelation, like I said earlier, a hope. And so as I grew older and got, older and older and, into my early teens, I just started noticing how a lot of the people that I knew when I was a child were less and less present in the spaces that I occupied. And, when you're a kid, you don't really think about all of the things, but you're, things that I'm reminded of is that never underestimate what children notice. And I noticed things that I didn't have context for when I was younger, but now that I'm older, I understand better. And honestly, it wasn't until I was at Maxwell, I would say it was in my sophomore year, that I'd ever heard of the term that Baha'u'llah designated to people of African descent, the pupil of the eye. I'd never heard that term. And for me to get all the way to my sophomore year in high school and not have heard that, and not have began to understand the real, the energy, the power, the implications of that designation by Baha'u'llah was, when I look back on it now, it's a little bit tragic, because I grew up during a time where, and I think it may be still the same way, but I'm not in school anymore as a kid. I grew up as a Black child. It didn't matter that my mother was white. And so with that came, there was just juxtaposition in the Baha'i community. I saw lots of kids like me. And I grew up understanding that we were all one human family, right? But then I went to school and was treated a completely different way. And I have to say that had I known kind of how Baha'u'llah, this designation that he gave to people of African descent, I wonder sometimes if my experience as a child would have been different. So the importance of never underestimating how early and how soon this type of education needs to be given to our children of African descent, and honestly, to children of all races, but particularly to children of African descent who are experiencing, really, they're experiencing microaggressions, they're experiencing hardships that this would give context for. It would also let you know that what you're seeing is not crazy, that you're not just kind of making things up in your mind, that as a pupil of the eye, you see what's happening before you, and what you see is the truth. And there's something that's powerful about understanding that, even when you're very young. So this awakening to the pupil of the eye it just changed everything for me. When I was at Maxwell, it changed everything. My hair, I used to be ashamed of my hair. And I just started embracing everything about me. I will admit there was a level of anger, because as you begin to understand the truth of your ancestors, the truth of all these things, this anger comes out. But within the context of, when I was at Maxwell, there was a group called the Pupil of the Eye, and it was specifically for the students of African and African descent. And that space was a beautiful space to navigate through coming to terms with what it means to be a Black person, but then also being a Baha'i. So that was a beautiful experience for me. after I graduated Maxwell, I kind of traveled around a little bit, and I ended up in Chicago. And me and some friends of mine, this is when I was in my early 20s, we were at a Baha'i school in right outside of Chicago. And we gave this workshop on around race. And one of my friends who was presenting with me was he's South African. And he'd been living in Chicago, I'm not sure how long at this point. It's been a few years. And he had told this story about how he was walking home to his house one night and he got stopped by the police, and how often that was happening to him and how that was affecting him. And the one thing that stood out from that exchange was not that it did not seem to engender empathy in the white and Persian youth in that room. The response that we got back was from one of the youth that's always stuck with me, and kind of in a defensive way, that, Bob Henderson hasn't been stopped by police. And that somehow this thought that you could be in this space in the Baha'i community as an African-American person, and I'm not going to go into all the stuff around people kind of creating dichotomies around popularity and things like that. But at the time, Bob Henderson was the secretary of the NSA, and he had been for years, and lived in right around the National Center. And what struck me about that and was just the disconnect that, one, I don't know if this child had ever had a conversation with Bob Henderson about whether or not he was stopped by the police. And it was my first time really realizing that people really think that money and position protects people of African descent. And that, and in the same voice, it was then saying to my friend who was sharing this really traumatic experience for him, completely disregarded what he just said. Okay, so those types of behaviors in these spaces that we share with our white and Persian friends can be harmful and unsafe. To hear Black stories, the stories of the Black experience, right? Then, during around that same time, I had a Baha'i youth workshop. It was actually a bunch of pre-youth, and a lot of them were African American, and we had gone to a Baha'i youth conference. And I had probably like 10 of them with me. And we were the only representation of Black people at this Baha'i youth conference. In a place, it was in DC, where you have Howard University, you've got Black community, but we were the only Black group in this space. And my group was so uncomfortable because the Persian, particularly the Persian youth, but some of the white youth, like they were getting these dirty looks from them. They were being, purposely left out of things. And they all kind of stayed together because they were so uncomfortable in this space. And I remember right before the junior youth got on the stage to perform, this little white girl, she must have been 10 years old. She walks up to me at the side of the stage and she says, "Thank you for bringing Black people." And that is the community, right? So then we wonder why so many people of African descent have disengaged from the community. We wonder why there's so little representation in a place like South Carolina, where now we experience entry by troops here, but our LSAs don't reflect the demographics. Our communities don't reflect the demographics. Most people of African descent have stopped coming to Baha'i things years ago and just went back to church. And the interesting thing is that when we go back years later and talk with people, they still consider themselves Baha'is, but there was no place for them in the Baha'i community. And I personally, no one else may feel this, but I feel like the entry by troops effort was undermined by white supremacy. It was undermined by unacknowledged and not doing the work that Shoghi Effendi gave to our white friends. And there's been talk over the years that somehow the entry by troops experience in South Carolina was a failed attempt. There was no failure. It was that there are people here who are still connected to Baha'u'llah. And as I said, it was undermined by white supremacy, and I will go into that in just a moment. But the thing that the entry by troops experienced in South Carolina, it inspired what we know today as the study circles. It was the first time that we came to understand that we needed a system of education that would support large numbers of people coming into the faith. So the work. So the work for our white Baha'i brothers and sisters, and I would also include our Persian Baha'i brothers and sisters, our Hispanic Baha'i brothers and sisters, is I have it all highlighted, right? So to abandon once for all their inherent and at times subconscious sense of superiority, to correct their tendency towards revealing a patronizing attitude, to persuade through their intimate, spontaneous, and informal association of the genuineness of their friendship and the sincerity of their intentions, and to master impatience of any lack of responsiveness on a people who have received for so long a period such grievous and soul-healing wounds. This is the work. This is the work for our white friends. And I know that for many people, you probably know that there is a corresponding part to this that is for people of African descent. I left that out on purpose because what I have seen over and over and over again is Black believers are basically faced with two choices. They can stay in the Baha'i community and push their way through Baha'u'llah's grace and just through prayer and, talking with their friends of African descent, and maybe there are one or two friends who are white that will listen. They can push through and they say, this faith is my faith. I'm going to keep at this. I'm going to keep doing it, right? Despite all of the things that happen within the community, I'm going to keep doing it, right? And so we've kept. I feel like folks have forgiven and forgiven and forgiven over and over and over again. People have been open to friendship. There has not been a time, for me at least in my experience with my circle of friends of African descent, that any of us have cut off being open to friendship with our white and Persian believer friends, right? That has not happened. But what hasn't happened in a collective, like truly critical mass movement, what hasn't happened is this work by our white friends. So the onus has been on the Black community for years to stay engaged despite. So that's the one choice. The other choice is just to completely leave the community, which a lot of people have chosen to do. And people, people of African descent go through waves of being very engaged and then waves of needing a break, and then waves of being very engaged, and then waves of needing a break. And I can only speak from my own experience. I don't want to say this is like the experience of every person of African descent in this space today, but it has been the experience that I have seen of my friends, and this experience that I have seen here in South Carolina with the mass exodus of people of African descent. The mass exodus, to the point that at one point we had so many LSAs that had to be elected every year that we were given like an extra week or two to get all the elections done. That's not happening anymore. That many people have really disconnected from the community, not from Baha'u'llah. Let's make that clear, but from the community. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that our white friends have not done this work. So through the work I've been doing with our moral imperative, I've come to realize that anti-racism efforts are on a spectrum. And just like there's no monolithic Black experience, like you can't say all Black people are like this, you can't say all white people are like that, right? But there is a spectrum of anti-racism efforts. So you have complete silence, and that is just folks who just don't speak up, they don't notice, they don't have, they don't say anything. Then you have speaking up without self-awareness. So something that I've also come to realize is that the Black community has had hundreds of years to deal with this. They've had hundreds of years, probably millions of conversations, tons of prayer, resilience building, language building, pupil of the eye seeing experience with racism. Our white and Persian friends are woefully behind. So sometimes they, people who believe in the oneness of mankind and know that racism is wrong, they'll come into spaces with disregarding the years of experience behind people of African descent and speak up in those spaces completely not connected to what's happened, and lacking the language, lacking the historical understanding of race in America, lacking all of that information. They aren't really able to show up in an effective way in the space. So then speaking up in anger without self-awareness. So then you have moving into our white friends and Persian friends who feel strongly that race is wrong, and they see when things are happening, and they speak up with this anger that shuts down conversations. So in the end, it doesn't actually help the African American community, because the conversation ends, because the anger and the way the words that are used, it shuts down the conversation with other white people, other Persian people. And I say that this comes also without awareness, really centering white anger at racism rather than centering and being empathetic to the Black experience and saying, hey, if they can still hold conversations with people after experiencing traumas and microaggressions, you know what? I can use my words in a different way to continue this conversation with this white person, so that a Black person doesn't have to have this conversation if they don't want to, and isn't re-triggered. So I have a lot of Black friends, Baha'is and not Baha'is, who are triggered by conversations now with people who are unaware. They're triggered by it. So then the next is, having good intentions, recognizing that racism is wrong, but then being undermined by unacknowledged white supremacy tendencies. So this goes back to doing the work. When the work is happening and you're actively engaged, you're mindfully engaged in how am I showing up in this space, those good intentions actually become helpful in this space. But sometimes those good intentions become not helpful in that you come into the space, you see there's a problem, and you want to address the problem, but then what is developed out of that is handed to the Black friends, and we're like, what do we do with this? Like, this is not what we wanted, right? This is not what we wanted. This needed to be done in a consultative space, and our voice is not included in the solution that you've brought, right? And then the behavior of, and I've seen this happen, of friends who've done all this work without really consulting the Black friends, getting their feelings hurt and getting defensive because it's just not, oh, thank you. This isn't what I want, but thank you, right? Good intentions that include the work lead to real change. So then there's the self-aware, reflective. So you're reflecting, you're self-aware, you're aware of these things that are showing up, you're ready to do the work, but you just don't know where to start, right? That is the perfect place for conversations. That's the perfect place to have conversations with your Black friends. And sometimes even that, it's kind of like read a book. I have Black friends, it's like, read a book. If you want to know where to start, read a book. If you want to know where to start, look at the statistics. Look at the statistics of what's happening to our Black communities, and find a way to use your talents and your skills to help in that situation, and include people of African descent in that process. Don't do for us, do with us. And then lastly, and this is where I'm really excited, because people, I'm experiencing this in our moral imperative. People are getting to this stage, which is so exciting. And that's when people are self-aware, reflective, and actively mindful about how they show up in a space. Like, they think about it when they walk into the grocery store, when they walk into their classroom, when they walk into a meeting. They're already mindful. I am possessing a space of privilege. I am a white person expressing, in a space of privilege with unaware, embedded white supremacist tendencies. I'm mindful of this. So then being able to notice the tendency and stopping before acting on it. I'm excited because I have quite a few people in the Our Moral Imperative program who have moved into this space. And then this is where real change and real consultation with people of color can happen in a way that's effective, and it's collaborative. And this is where you create trust with the Black community. And then Black people who have for years shown their tendency to be accepting are able to do that and be safe. Okay, so finally, I'm looking at my time. Come on, where am I? Cool, yeah. All right, I'm a public speaking teacher. Keep things in time. So showing up on the long and thorny road. Listening. Listening has to be one of the most underused, underrated, just people don't use listening very often. And when I say listening, I mean active listening. So you're listening to understand, not to respond. I use this a lot in my public speaking classes, that you're listening to hear what people are saying underneath. And I love the story of Abdu'l-Baha. I think that it personifies the level of listening that needs to happen right now in our white and Persian communities, Baha'i community. The story, you can find in vignettes of Abdu'l-Baha, where there was this really annoying reporter. He shows up to this, the house or the place that Abdu'l-Baha is, and there's all these, really well-known Baha'is there. And this man shows up and they're really annoyed by him, like they don't like him. They're trying to keep him, they don't want him in the space, right? So they're kind of they're not being welcome. They're not being warm. And Abdu'l-Baha, seeing this, takes this gentleman on his own into a room with him. And Abdu'l-Baha just sits and listens and listens. And this man just talks and talks and talks and talks. And Abdu'l-Baha listens to this man so deeply and so profoundly that he knew that he was being seen. He knew that Abdu'l-Baha saw him. And that's where we need to be right now in our Baha'i communities. So centering the voices of Black and Indigenous people. Slow down. Many, many times embedded white supremacy shows up when the focus is on the product and not the process. Slow down. Initiate friendships. Acquaintances are not friends. So showing up to feast or showing up to a holy day or showing up to some sort of gathering where there's Black friends there and you have a conversation and you talk and then you go home. If you haven't had a conversation with them beyond that space, you're not friends. That's an acquaintance. You know just this much about that person and they know just this much about you. You have not heard their heart at that point. You may have gotten glimpses of it, but I'm telling you that a friendship can hold space. A friendship holds space. A friendship, a person can tell you, this is what I experienced, and the person hearing it listens and takes it in, and you become trusted with potentially painful experiences. You become trusted with that. That's a friendship. So if you don't have friendships, and if you look at your circle, if you have a lot of acquaintances who happen to be people of African descent, but they're not friends, I think beginning to reimagine what unity and love looks like. Reimagine what that looks like, and being able to have, when Shoghi Effendi talks about the genuineness of friendship, inviting people into your home, not now, of course, but, doing some sort of Zoom call or phone call, and just having a friendship like you would with anyone else. What's been used a lot in the Baha'i community is love and unity have been used to shut down conversations that are uncomfortable. That this isn't unity. This doesn't feel like unity. If a Black person or a Native person says, this has been my experience in this space, what begins to happen is unity and love become weapons to discontinue that conversation. Reimagine what that looks like. Unity is strong enough to hold pain. Love is strong enough to hold discomfort. Trust in that unity and love to take us beyond where we are. Listen more than speak. The moment you think you have arrived is the moment that you show you have more work to do. That just because as Baha'i, we believe in the oneness of humanity, we believe in, the eradication of prejudices of all kind, it doesn't mean we don't have work to do. And it doesn't absolve us of the work that needs to be done. And then to understand that this work is lifelong and it will get messy, and it is messy. But to build this muscle of resilience needs to be the core part of that process, becoming resilient in this work, because we are undoing centuries of hurt. We're undoing centuries, not just of hurt, but systematic and systemic oppression that did not actually start here in America. It started actually in Europe. This idea of the supremacy of whites began through colonization. It began in Europe and was brought to America. So this is older than even slavery. This is older than slavery. This is older than the annihilation of entire tribes of indigenous people. It's older than that. There is something about what happened in Europe that created this space in the minds of so many European people that for some reason, for them to feel noble, they had to put other people below them. I don't know where that came from, but understanding that we are undoing centuries of erroneous thought. And Baha'u'llah came to help us do that. But the writings are not passive. The writings are not passive. They're not meant to be read and then you go off and do your own thing. The writings are meant to be acted upon. And the work that is done around the guidance is the work that will see the healing of the wounds of racism. And so I really encourage, implore our white and Persian friends to do the work and step into the arena where things are messy, where things are not comfortable. But believe me, guess what? You got a whole bunch of Black and brown friends who can completely empathize with you, who can say, I have been there, stay in it, stay in it. Because on the other side, there is healing. On the other side, there's something we haven't gotten to yet. So trust in your Black and brown friends to carry you through the, to work with you through the discomfort. And so our moral imperative, a revolutionary change in white America.
Is that the end? Well, how enlightening. Thank you so much, Adelia, for breaking down this not so frequently talked about aspect of the work which has to be done to heal the slow healing wounds of racism. I like that perspective, stop weaponizing unity and love to shut down that conversation. It's awesome. Friends, Adelia is prepared to take questions and any responses that you might have to her presentation. So anyone with any comments or questions, please feel free to share at this time. Ruha.
Allahu Akbar. Thank you, Adelia. Thank you so much for your inspiring presentation. I loved it and took a lesson. I wanted to share with you whether you agree that this exposure to different cultures and knowing should be across the board. We should emerge when we are in the community. We should show interest in learning about the cultures and the backgrounds of others, whether it is Persian, white, African American, Spanish, others. So we cannot exclude one and say, my learning will be focused on this, in order to have an understanding that leads to that unity that we are hoping for the world. As you know, we are not bounded by united by many aspects of life. For example, as you mentioned repeatedly, a Persian community. We are not bounded by memories of school or streets or lifestyles or anything. Adversaries of life has pushed a community to another land. It was not a seeking of the commonalities of elements and the culture foundationally for the last 40 years have not been there. But what we are bounded is the principles of Baha'u'llah, is actually the love that we have. And that should be the basis driving us to learning from each other, understanding each other's suffering. So I was wondering to learn your prospects on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ruha. Yeah, I mean, I think love, Abdul Baha speaks very, I love I love his quote about love when he talks about it being the thing that attracts the very atoms, right? So love is really what I asked is that we reimagine what love looks like. Because what happens when many people come to this country, whether they come here by choice or they come here because they're escaping persecution, many people who immigrate here are not taught about the historical aspects of white supremacy and race here. So a lot of immigrants who come here, they notice right away the power structure and begin to align themselves with the power structure that will give them the most success financially, the most sense of safety, and more often than not, that is the white community. And I think that by focusing on overcoming, not necessarily looking at just culture, but Shohi Effendi was very specific about behaviors. So changing behaviors is universal. Changing behaviors doesn't matter what the skin color of someone is. But he was very specific about where these behaviors, who these behaviors are with, that they need to be worked on and eliminated. And so by changing behavior, then how you relate to everybody changes. Not just people of African descent, not just indigenous people, not just Persian people or Hispanic people, Asian people. Like, it just, by changing behavior, you change everything. And I think sometimes love has to be strong enough to push you through, because a lot of it requires a lot of inner reflection and coming to Jesus inside yourself. That can be hard to deal with. So remembering that love, I think also sometimes love is not quite enough, and you got to have resilience. You got to just focus on, focus on Baha'u'llah and say this faith has come to change the world. And I'm just gonna, this faith is for me. I love you, Baha'u'llah. I might be struggling with the community. So I think that we have a very clear directive, especially most recently from the Universal House of Justice. And it's not a broad, from what the messages I've read, it's not a watered down, broad, let's just kind of get to know everybody. It is, we've got to deal with racism. And racism has very specific things that we have to do. And the groups that are most, that are affected by this on a systemic way are Indigenous and Black people. Everyone else who comes to America, you experience that because Black people experience it. But once once you begin to heal this space and change the systems that are existing for Black and Indigenous people, you'll change the systems for everybody. So, yeah, love is important, and also action, and also self-reflection with love too.
Donna.
Hi, I missed the comment that you were making about the white supremacy or whatever it was that came to existence before slavery. I missed that part.
Oh, I was just saying that that it was brought here through colonization, right? So the indigenous people of America didn't have supremacy ideas. So it didn't come from the Native Americans. It didn't come from people living here. It came with white people coming from Europe. It came from Portugal and Spain and Britain and France. It came with them. So what I was saying is that when we're looking at trying to dismantle hundreds of years of a thought pattern that we don't quite know I don't know the root of it, but that's what we're trying to dismantle. And it pre-existed, it predated slavery, and it made slavery possible. It made the annihilation of Native Americans possible. That's what I was speaking to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the annihilation of Native Americans as well as East Indian culture was, destroyed. And then all the ideas transported into Africa, where all of the countries were colonized and undermined as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Great question. Great comment. Anybody else? Elizabeth, and then Solange after you. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I guess I have a problem with is what did happen in the 70s with the mass intake of new Baha'is. I think the reason that we can't find them anymore is because we didn't stay with them. I think we have to be willing to stay and teach rather than to just say, sign this card and then send them a newsletter. You got to stay with them. You have to develop the comfort level to be with people who are different than you and stay there and build a community. But don't just enroll Baha'is and then leave them to themselves. That when Solange was singing the song, the verse of God, lead them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge. That God does his work through us. We cannot leave people. We have to stay and we have to build. And that, I think, is a way to also harmonize the races, because if we live together, we get to really know each other and we can befriend each other. But if we're not willing to stick around and allow the new group to take actual root and let those roots be healthy, it just isn't going to change anything. But we have all the tools in the verses of God to do this job of bringing the races together, bringing the world together. But we just have to dig in there and allow ourselves to do the work, because I think that's what love actually is. Love is about working. It's about building. It's about also tearing down walls between people. And it's about staying with each other until the flower is completely in full bloom. And then if we need to go, we can go, but we know that we have a strong connection with that community, because that community is really alive and growing. Okay, I'm sorry.
And I did want to say that I think there were people who stayed, but here's the conundrum, right? There are people who stayed, but because they didn't do the work that Shoghi Effendi asked for white and Persian people, white people in particular, to do, it estranged the Black community. So stay, I think that's definitely key. But the other part of it is stay and be able to work through these tendencies. Because what happened is, it's almost like these little fiefdoms developed, where you'd have pioneers who were predominantly white and Persian basically deciding everything for a community. So then, you know, people of African descent living here, if they wanted to participate, it was basically they were barred from participating. Not like in a very, oh, you can't participate. It was very subtle, very, you know. So I think that it's this dual thing of make root and do the self work so that you can do the outer work as well. But I think you're right. I completely agree with you, and that's why I'm so excited about this new the approach that we have now in the Baha'i community of the neighborhood and living in the neighborhood and doing core activities and study circles in the neighborhood. Yeah, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great comment and great response. Beautiful. Solange.
I love your presentation that you spoke, Adelia. It makes us feel joyful and thinking about the history of this nation. So it peels back to Universal Declaration Human Rights and Black Lives Matter, and to love their brother, and talking about the relationships and on what is happening in the country, what they need to reconcile their differences, just not let evil endure, but keeping security and unity alive.
Thank you, Solange. I love that.
Beautiful observation. Thank you, Solange. Any other comments, questions for Adelia? Donna?
I was thinking when Adelia was responding to me about a book I had read, and this wasn't the black-white things. This was a novel about Hawaii, and you know, it talked about how the missionaries would go to Hawaii, and you know, this to spread Christianity. And when they went there, the one character, this minister, would teach the people all this fear and, you know, whatever of God. And, you know, when people start coming to him saying that they wanted to enter the ministry, you know, he basically would shoot them down, because in his mind, you know, the Hawaiians would never be good enough to be the ministers, the ones who were responsible for helping spread the word and to shepherd the people. And, you know, so this, you know, that wasn't the attitude of all of the ministers, but this particular one who was the central character of that part of the book. And it makes me think about that tie-in that you were talking about, how let's say in South Carolina, the Baha'is who pioneered there were the ones who were like in the know and the experts about the faith. So it just made me think back on that.
Thank you, Donna. Roger. Are you making a comment, Roger? You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Adelia, for your beautiful comments and for your beautiful presentation. I was saying that I'm one of those Persian Baha'is who is still learning after 60 years of being here in this country, probably between 50 to 60 years. And this is something that we all need to understand, that the racism is the most critical issue of our time, particularly primarily in this country. Yes, Europe, starting Europe, but it probably got worse and worse in this country,
Yes.
based on what I understand. So we are all learning. We should all join hands in learning more, and particularly, I may be speaking as a Persian Baha'i, that although in the school and here and there I had read books and stories and had made observations, but it is nothing like, as Adelia says, making friendships and being close to people and learning firsthand what this is and what this racism is and what it has done to people. And then on top of all these things, what our job is in this connection, in this regard, with regard to changing and transforming the issue. For a lot of Persians who have gone through a lot of persecution, they understand their side better, but they do not understand this side as much, particularly for those of us who are not versed in the English language, who are still within the clique of our few Persian friends, or perhaps going to the feast and a few people that we see in the feast. So it is a challenge, it's a continuous challenge, and we need to continue to learn. And then one last thing, our mission, as you all know, does not end with the Black friends and African American friends and the Persian friends. But it seems to me that the hardest task, the hardest challenge is to revive those KKKs and those people, those racist people, who I don't know whether 30% or 40% of the population of this country alone. So it's a challenge that we should all be aware, and particularly today with this wonderful presentation, to say that I want to bond with everyone here and on the planet to change the world. Thank you again.
Thank you, Roger. I've actually had a number of Persian friends do our moral imperative, and it's been very interesting. And I feel like there's a mixed, because yes, many of our Persian friends, especially the elders that came to America, came as a result of persecution, and so they understand what it means to be persecuted. But then the other side of it is that many came here seeing the dynamics and wanting to experience, safety and noticing who the power structure was within the white community. So there's just this dual thing that I'm noticing our Persian friends are needing or working through. And I feel like that's a conversation that I think really needs to continue being had. I know that that there's spaces for it, and I thank you, Roger, for speaking to that, and Ruha as well, our two Persian friends here, and I think that the work is in making the guidance a reality, and the way we do that is through action, through what is the stages now that we're doing, through reflection gatherings. We do what? Planning, action, reflection. Planning, action, reflection. You reflect on how the experience was, you go back, you change some things, you act, you plan, you act, you reflect. I think using that same process with this, looking at the guidance from the Universal House of Justice, looking at the guidance from Shoghi Effendi, they gave us very, very clear action steps. So the question is no longer what to do. The question is, how am I going to show up to do the work, right? And some of this requires, Shoghi Effendi was very clear about what is needed for the white friends to do and what is needed for the Black friends to do. And within that spectrum, you've got your Persian friends and your Asian friends and your Hispanic friends. And we all know, I mean, I have people in our moral imperative who are very clear. They may be Persian, but they definitely experience life as a privileged white person. So they're very clear and they're honest with themselves and they're truthful with themselves, that they know that themselves and maybe their family has taken on some of the behaviors of the power structure. And they're very clear on that. And so I think at the core of this too is truthfulness. Like, we got to be truthful with ourselves, be truthful in our communities. Truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. Without truthfulness, progress and success for any soul is not possible, right? So, yeah, I just think that this is exciting times, it's scary times, it's exciting times. And I really thank you guys all for your questions and for listening and being here with me. I'm seeing some familiar names. I haven't seen Ralph Allen in years. And my sister Asalai and my brother Jay and Matthew Taylor, haven't seen you in forever. It's been, Matthew and I went to Maxwell together. Asalai and I grew up from 13 or 14, somewhere in there. It's been a long time. Saw Ralph, met up with Ralph. He was one of my dance students when I was living in Atlanta before we went to Abu Dhabi. And Jay, I've known him since he was 7. So, so it's been great just seeing some of these familiar names. And I thank you guys thank you, Aunt Barbara, for inviting me here.
Well, if you can indulge one more comment, Ruha has had her hand up again.
I just, I don't want to interrupt. If you want to end it, that's fine.
Oh, I'm good.
It's up to you. But I just wanted you to know that how this type of conversation is helpful. As you mentioned, even we share the same principles, but you're absolutely right. We need to focus on our behavior. I left Iran at a very young age, but because I lived in Africa and Europe, when I came to a state, my love and the way I approached my learning on those continents was kind of directed my interaction with my American community. It was a different love that I felt and different admiration that I have formed because of those experiences, that you learn the beauty, the absolute beauty of people. And hopefully all together we join hand and continue these learnings. I don't want to take your time, but thank you.
Thank you, Ruha.
Thank you, dear heart. Good to see you, dear.
Good to see you.
Okay, friends, I'm assuming there are no other comments at this time. And those were great questions and lots to consider here on this subject. At this time, we'd like to welcome any guests who are here, whether you're a member of our faith or guest visiting, if you're a member returning who was a former resident or just visiting from out of town, we'd love to hear from you. Well, seems like everyone feels they already belong here. I'm not visiting. So we appreciate your presence today. Thank you. A couple of quick announcements. Next week's speaker will be Dr. Greg Watson, followed the week after by Mr. Burton Smith on the 17th. So please be sure to stop in again for another outstanding presentation those weeks. So you can watch for details sometime later this week for this coming Sunday. Oh, and please remember the food distribution program every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the afternoon at the Baha'i Unity Center in the parking lot. And do spread the word to help combat food insecurity in and around the community. For members of the Baha'i faith, you are warmly encouraged to make a financial contribution to the South DeKalb Baha'i Fund and the National Baha'i Fund through the online contribution system. You can log in at ocs.baha'i.us. And I don't assume there are any other announcements at this time. And if not, we'd like to say many thanks to everyone who worked together to make today's program possible. And thanks to all of you for sharing your day with us. Until next time, stay safe and well. We're going to end now with a prayer for the departed to remember our fallen comrades who have fallen to the devastating COVID-19 and its now variant subsets, I guess, as well as anyone else who has passed away recently that you wish to remember through this prayer. Oh my God, verily thy servant humble before the majesty of thy divine supremacy, lowly at the door of thy oneness, hath believed in thee and in thy verses, hath testified to thy word, hath been enkindled with the fire of thy love, hath been immersed in the depths of the ocean of thy knowledge, hath been attracted by thy breezes, hath relied upon his supplications to thee, and hath been assured of thy pardon and forgiveness. He hath abandoned this mortal life and hath flown to the kingdom of immortality, yearning for the favor of meeting thee. O Lord, glorify his station. Shelter him under the pavilion of thy supreme mercy. Cause him to enter thy glorious paradise and perpetuate his existence in thine exalted rose garden, that he may plunge into the sea of light in the world of mysteries. Verily, thou art the generous, the powerful, the forgiver, and the bestower. Abdu'l-Baha. Thank you once again, friends, for coming. We appreciate you so much. We'll hopefully see you next week. Allah.
Lawapa, thank you.